there's one word that I've said more than any other on this channel, that is Sony A6300. Well, that's two words, but the point I want to make is that I talk a lot about Sony cameras, and I've been a Sony shooter myself for the better part of the last 3 to 4 years, to the point that it's almost created an inherent bias in me, which leads to me blindly recommending Sony cameras to almost anybody and everybody. Now, I don't necessarily think that's a bad thing, because I don't know of a person who is unhappy with their Sony purchase, but it has left me wanting to try out other cameras from other manufacturers. And when I say other cameras, I'm mainly only referring to Fuji, maybe Canon, definitely not Nikon. I don't think they're that relevant, but I've been wanting to try out Fuji for a long time, especially given that the Patrick Tomasos and the Aditya Vermas of the world all shoot on Fuji, and I really love their work. So I did what any broke wannabe YouTuber filmmaker would do. I reached out to Fuji and asked if they would be interested in sending me their camera, and they did. They sent me their X-T30, this tiny little camera which is actually pretty powerful. I've been using it for a few days now, and I want to share my thoughts on it from the perspective of a Sony user. And also stick around till the end, because we're going to do a little comparison with the A6400, which is the camera that's currently shooting this talking head. Also, just to be clear, there is no money involved, and I do have to send this camera back to Fuji, so don't worry, I'm not required to say anything nice about it. With that being said, let's get started. The first thing I want to talk about is just how small the X-T30 is. I used to think Sony cameras are small, and well, to be fair, they are small, but the X-T30 is even smaller than that. It's a bit taller than the Sony A6400, but it is less wide and overall lighter. Especially the package that they gave me, I got it with a 35 f2 lens, and they didn't even have a lens cap or a strap for some reason. So this is literally the package I walked around with, and I actually thought it would be hard to shoot with initially because the body is kind of flat and the grip is very thin. But I did a couple of photo walks out on the street, and I was actually surprised at just how fun the experience was. It felt, I guess the best way I would describe it is, it just felt frictionless. The camera literally fit into my hoodie pocket, and even when I took it out and had it out to my eye level, it was just extremely tiny, and I don't think anybody ever noticed it. It's like a tourist camera in the way that it looks, but it's capable of way more than that. Secondly, this camera is dial city. There's dials for everything. There's a dial to change your shutter speed, there's a dial to change your ISO, your aperture dial is on the lens, there's even a button to switch between electronic viewfinder and the LCD. Like, everything is analog, and it just feels authentic. And again, I think I'll keep saying this, but it just eliminates all the friction. I could just focus on my composition, click the photo, and move on to the next shot and just repeat the whole process. And I think that's how gear should be. It should be unobtrusive to the process of creating, and the X-T30 nails that. It's great for street photos, it's great for just everyday documentation of your life, as pretentious as that sounds. Every sample photo you'll see on screen was taken with the X-T30 and the 35 f2 lens by me, unless stated otherwise. Dinesh and Vignesh did take some photos, and they did help me out with the whole thing, so go check them out. I do wish I had the option to get a 1.4 or a 1.8 lens, because I did find that f2 was a bit limiting, especially in low light. Obviously, they do make 1.4 and 1.8 lenses. It's just that they gave me a f2 lens. I think they didn't have a 1.8 lens. But the photos that you are seeing on screen are straight out of camera JPEGs with the classic chrome or acros film simulation. The way Fuji cameras work, for those of you that may not know, is that they have these film simulations, and this was actually one of the biggest reasons I wanted to try it out. I don't want to use the word filters, because I think that doesn't do complete justice to what it really is, but they are in a way like filters. They are looks, specifically looks that emulate the feel of old film stocks. I mostly shot on classic chrome and acros, classic chrome being a color simulation and acros being the black and white one. I think the photos look great color wise, straight out of camera. These are all JPEGs, and I did shoot RAW as well. I shot RAW plus JPEG, and the way that works is that on the X-T30, the RAW is completely neutral, like any other, like a RAW on any other camera. It's, you know, completely uncompressed, and each RAW is actually 50 megabytes. That's insane, a lot of information. But then the JPEG that you shoot, you can choose for it to have a film simulation. so that way you can immediately share it if you want to, and it does look quite nice in my opinion, and each JPEG is only like 6 or 7 megabytes, and I think that's very efficient. As you're seeing on screen, all these are unedited photos, and I think they look great. There's kind of no need to edit them, I think. At least I would post them like that. So yeah, super efficient workflow, and it just, yeah man, for street photos and for everyday documentation of your life, X-T30 is pretty awesome. Alright, this talking head you're seeing right now is currently being recorded on the X-T30 with the 35f2 lens at DCI 4K in f-log at 24 fps at 200 megabits per second bitrate. I think this might just be one of the only cameras, or the only camera that does 200 megabits per second bitrate. In this price range, it does 200 megabits per second across all its frame rates. So at 4K 30 you can do that, at 4K 24 you can do that, and also Full HD, which you can do up to 120 fps, also has the option of 200 megabits per second bitrate. Now, unfortunately, I don't have much sample outdoor footage to show you because when I went out I was mostly focused on photos, and I don't want to go out too much, so I guess this is kind of the best I can give you right now. This talking head is the test that I can give you right now. It's being shot in f-log, and I'm gonna put my own color on top of it. This video is currently being recorded in 8-bit onto the SD card. However, you can do 10-bit via external monitor / recorder. Now, if you're going to be buying this camera, and if it's going to be your first camera, chances are you're still in your basic to intermediate level of your craft, in which case none of this stuff probably matters to you. However, just knowing that the option is there, I think is great. It's awesome because it allows you to improve your craft without actually upgrading your camera body. I personally view recording in 10-bit using an external monitor as one step higher than recording internally with just your camera body and lens at 8-bit, because at that point you are thinking about SSDs, you're recording externally, you're thinking a lot more about color grading, and you just pay a lot more attention to the little details. So if you want to do that with the X-T30, that is possible, whereas with other camera manufacturers, if you wanted to improve or go from 8-bit to 10-bit, you would have to upgrade your whole body itself. And for example, on the A6400, if you want to do 10-bit, you can't do that. You would have to get one of Sony's A7S series of cameras. So that way, I think the X-T30 is awesome if you plan to take video seriously. If you want to be a cinematographer, then I think this might be a great choice because you do have the 10-bit option, and if you want to learn and experiment with that type of stuff, that is there. So the X-T30 in my eyes is more a cinema camera than a camera for content creation because of the 10-bit video, the 200 megabits per second bitrate, and also the 4K that it shoots is DCI 4K. DCI 4K, for those of you that may not know, is 4096 by 2160 pixels. The 4K that other consumer cameras or even the 4K that your smartphones shoot is Ultra HD 4K, that is 3840 by 2160 pixels. What does this mean to the average person? Not much, if I'm being honest, but with DCI 4K you do get a little bit more horizontal resolution, and because of that the aspect ratio also becomes 17 by 9, making the image a bit more cinematic, so-called. And DCI 4K is also what typically film productions are shot on. So all that combined, I mean, it's not the feature that will make or break your camera purchase decision, but I do think that it's making the X-T30 like a cinema camera and less of a content creation camera. Another little feature is that with shutter speed you can choose options like 1:48. Now I have not seen the 1:48 option on any other camera before. Why does this matter? This will allow you to maintain your 180-degree rule properly if you're shooting at 24 fps. So that's pretty neat. Plus, another pro feature that I noticed is that on the X-T30 your video and photo modes stay separate. So the exposure settings and all that you use on video won't transfer over to photo, and that is such a blessing because a lot of times I find that I'm using completely opposite ends in terms of settings for photo and video, and when I'm shooting outdoors it gets really frustrating because on the Sony camera the same settings apply on both modes and you constantly have to keep switching between exposure settings, and in the process of doing that you end up missing the shot. All those little features combined and you're getting an experience that's very similar to using an actual cinema camera, or at least more cinema camera like than any of its competition, and because of that I think the X-T30 is quite suitable for doing serious video work. And when I say serious video work, I'm referring to narrative stuff, maybe product, and anything that you get paid to do, because you do have the option for F-Log, you have the option for 200 megabits per second, you have 10-bit video, and all those things I think just help in getting a good image. That being said, I don't think the X-T30 is as suitable for content creation. Now when I say content creation, I'm referring to recording YouTube videos like this one, long form content, because the X-T30 has recording limits. At 4K you have a 10-minute recording limit, and at Full HD you have a 15-minute recording limit. Now for those of you that may not be aware of how recording limits work, I just want to clarify that it does not mean that you can't record for more than 10 minutes at 4K at all on this camera. It just means that at one stretch you can only record for 10 minutes, and then once that video clip is complete you can start rolling again immediately, but each time you roll you can only do for 10 minutes at 4K and 15 minutes at Full HD. So if you don't necessarily record in one go and take breaks between your recordings, then this won't be, the recording limits are a non-issue. But if you do plan to record long form content like this, then that is something to consider. Another thing I've noticed is that at 4K, for some reason the file size or the file gets split into multiple 4GB chunks of files, and I don't know why it does that, but if you end up recording for like a full 10 minutes, which is the max it can do at one stretch, as I said, you'll probably end up getting like 3 or 4 files instead of one. This may not be that big of an issue, because when you put all the clips together it does play back smoothly without any skip frames or anything. But if you have a lot of clips that you're dealing with, it does get a little inconvenient in terms of organization and also in terms of syncing audio. Speaking of audio, on the X-T30 you don't get a direct 3.5mm input port, you have a 2.5mm input port, and here you can use a 2.5 male to 3.5 female adapter, and with that you can plug in an external shotgun microphone or even use headphones to monitor audio, which again is a pro type of feature which not a lot of other cameras in this price range have. Even the audio control on the X-T30 is quite good. You can go from positive to like negative decibels in terms of like your gain for your external and internal microphone, giving you full control over the noise floor and that type of stuff. Finally, let's quickly talk about color. So as I said, this clip is being recorded, this talking head is being recorded in F-Log, and I have color graded the footage to my liking, to my taste. However, if you don't want to go through that, if you don't know much about grading, Fuji has a free LUT on their website. It's called the Eternal LUT, and if you apply that, the footage will look pretty decent on F-Log as well. However, let's say you don't even want to do that much work, you just want color that looks nice straight out of camera. That is totally possible on the X-T30, because when you completely turn off F-Log, when you turn off all the simulations and any of that, the stock color that comes out of it is actually quite good, quite beautiful, I would say. Going back to the example of the video I made for my mom, I've been shooting a lot of content for her, and these are videos that require a quick turnaround time. So in situations like that, I don't want to deal with color, and all the footage I've been shooting on Sony with it, I don't think looks that nice when I turn off the picture profile on Sony. The color out of it is not that great. Now I shoot in log for all my own work, I get complete control over color in that case. However, when I completely turn off picture profiles, I don't think it looks that good. For example, take these two shots. One is shot on the X-T30, the other is the A6400. Both shot with the same kind of lens, almost same lens, both with the same exposure settings under the same lighting, and I think the X-T30 footage looks so much nicer. It looks so much more natural. It looks, I think, in general way more pleasing. It doesn't have any crazy tints, and also the highlight roll off, which I think is very important. It's the transition between the bright to the brightest areas of your image. That is so much smoother on the X-T30. It just looks way nicer, and I think on the whole, if you want an image that looks nice straight out of camera and don't want to put much effort into grading, the Fuji X-T30 can do that for you. Alright, X-T30, A6400, A6400, X-T30. Which one is for you? Well, I'm not going to give you a straight answer like always, because there are no straight answers. I mean, it really depends. It really depends on what you want. So let's start off with, I guess, the screen. On the A6400, you get a flip-up screen. I feel like I've said this like a million times in my videos now. On the X-T30, you don't have a flip-up screen. It just comes out like so, something similar to the A6300. The colors, subjectively speaking, I guess, on the X-T30 are better. The highlight roll-off is nicer. It's smoother. It looks more natural. Overall colors on the X-T30 with the film simulations and everything, that one goes for the Fuji. There is a 3.5mm direct 3.5mm input port on the 6400. That I don't know if the camera will focus. Whereas on the X-T30 you have a 2.5mm port, which means you will then have to get this, which is a 2.5 male to 3.5 female, plug that in, and then you can plug in your shotgun microphone. The X-T30 has overall better handling, and when I say handling I mean the dials and the button layout and also the menus. I think that's better. That makes it more ideal in general for street photography and shooting out and about, also for product and for portraits. There are no recording limits when it comes to video on the A6400, whereas on the X-T30 you have a 4K 10-minute recording limit and Full HD 15-minute recording limit. That being said, the sheer video quality is better on the X-T30 because of the 200 megabits per second, because of the potential 10-bit and all that type of stuff. The autofocus on both cameras is very similar. I would say the A6400 being a little bit better, but the X-T30 is also no slouch. It doesn't mean it's bad by any means. You'll be perfectly happy with it. The battery life on both cameras, I would say, is kind of similar. Again, I guess the A6400 is slightly better here. You would be able to shoot here in 2 batteries what this would take about 2.5, 3 batteries to shoot. The X-T30 is also, I guess, overall lighter, making it easier to carry around and shoot product photos with. So those are the key differences between the two cameras. Depending on what your needs are, you're going to have to decide what is better for you. Now, what I've noticed in general is that people don't just accidentally buy a Fuji camera. I mean, a lot of people around the world, photographers and non-photographers, have DSLR cameras in their homes. Just think about your uncle or your cousin who has a Canon 1300D with a 55-250 telephoto lens. We all know that one person who has a basic entry-level DSLR, typically a Canon or Nikon, sometimes a Sony, but almost never a Fuji. I found that Fuji cameras, you don't just accidentally buy them. Either you have to be super experienced and you must know something about cameras to have a Fuji, or you must have gone through some kind of a rabbit hole on YouTube, and that's how you must have discovered Fuji and bought that as your first camera. I just think that Fuji camera is for a certain type of audience. It's for artists, it's for street photographers, it's for purists, it's for people that love retro cameras and love pretty cameras that have a lot of dials. My experience with the X-T30 has been super awesome. I've enjoyed using this camera, and it's sad that I got to send it back, but hey, big shout out to Fuji for sending it out. Hopefully I can try out their other cameras. I'm really looking forward now to the X-T4 especially, and even the X100V. I really think there's a lot of potential there, and I cannot wait to try this out. I always found it a little pretentious when Fuji users said this, but in my experience, the X-T30 has been one of those few cameras that makes me want to use my gear more, that makes me want to shoot more, and I think that's the most you could ask for. But that's about it for this video, but don't click away yet. There are some more photo samples that I'm going to include after this little outro section. So if you enjoyed watching this video, or if you found it of value, give it a like. If you did not, vote it down. Let me know in the comments why I didn't like it. As always, if you have any questions, you can reach out to me on Instagram or send me a super text on my super page. My name is Suraj. Thank you so much for watching. I'll talk to you later. Like me, she my serving up every single plate. The hottest in the season, even summer looks away. Cause I got something to prove. I'm here cause I pay my dues. So please tell me something new. I'm in the game. Just be that sprint, that marathon, whatever the race. And after Astra promise, boy gon' need a space.